Hi guys, this is gsno.com and I'm here with the unboxing of the POCO F4, the regular one. After having played with the POCO F4 GT and the POCO X4 GT, it's time for this model. It's the successor of the POCO F3, but it keeps the same CPU, which is a Snapdragon 870. At the same time, it adds some extras to the camera, particularly an interesting approach to the main camera with optical image stabilization. It's an unboxing, so we're going to show you what's in the box. The device has already been set up, and you can find it in the stores for around $400, if not even less. Now, as you can see here, it has a pretty shiny backside with a frosted effect. It's quite bulky, I would have to say. It feels pretty heavy in the hand, and this type of footprint and design kind of reminds me of a Xiaomi Mi Mix device. I don't know why, that's the vibe I'm getting here. Now, I should probably also mention that it's IP certified, it's got an AMOLED screen, it's got fast charging, it even has infrared and stereo speakers. The POCO F3 was one of my recommendations for anyone who asked me about a solid mid-range gaming phone last year, and I don't see why this one cannot succeed it in a similar manner. Okay, so as it boots up, I'm going to show you what's inside the box. Quite a few extras, so we start with the key used to access the slots. Then we have here an adapter. An adapter which goes from USB-C to a 3.5mm connector, meaning we don't have an audio jack. Then we have the typical quick start guide, which is your manual, and also the warranty card. We won't forget about the screen protection. Some phone makers apply it from the factory, we have it here separately. And finally, the case, the bundled protective case with all the required cutouts. And then we go actually inside the box this time, where there is a hefty charger here. It's a 67 watt unit, as is written here, and it has a USB-A connector. It's supposed to charge up the phone pretty fast on paper, and we're talking here about 4500 mAh and about 38 minutes for a full charge. Then we have the cable, which goes from, as you can see here, USB-C to USB-A. That's pretty much everything we get inside the box, and let's actually gather everything that we got here, as I'll tell you more about the device. So it was unveiled earlier this summer. It's still a pretty fresh machine, and it comes with IP53 certification, meaning it can take a bit of dust and a bit of splashing, but not water dunking. We have a glass at the front and the back side, which you probably guessed, and I think it's time to talk more about the design now in a jiffy, as we put this back in here. Okay, so as I said, there's glass at the front, there's glass at the back with a nice frosted effect. Kind of reminds me of the Xiaomi Mi 11 Lite 5G, but the camera is definitely unique. I haven't seen this setup before on a Xiaomi device, on a Redmi device, on a POCO device. It's something else compared to the usual POCO affair, which covers this part of the back with the camera. This one goes more vertical. Okay, so measurements, 7.7 millimeters, although I could swear it's thicker, 195 grams, although I could swear it's heavier, and quite wide. That's my first impression of the phone. We're dealing with a quite wide device, and also one that has a flat frame, which should help us with the grip. Now, one thing worth mentioning here is that the device feels heavy but solidly built in my hand. It's sturdy, as one would say, and the grip is quite excellent. Now the screen you can see me playing with here has, I would say, medium thickness bezels, but at least they're symmetrical, and the panel you're seeing here is an AMOLED, 6.67 inches, Full HD, Gorilla Glass 5, 120Hz refresh rate, Dolby Vision, all the required bells and whistles. And at the same time, I think it's time to go inside the phone this time and show you the CPU we're dealing with. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Aside from the processor, which is a Snapdragon 870, we have 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigabytes of storage, UFS 3.1. We don't have a microSD card slot, sadly, but what we do have is a 4500 mAh battery with 67 watt charging. And for security, we have a fingerprint scanner here embedded in the power button. So if I use this finger, nothing happens. If I use this one, instant unlocking happens. We don't have an audio jack, as you can see for yourself, but we do have that adapter. And here you can see the SIM tray, microphone, USB-C 2.0 port, and one of the speakers. At the top side, there is a microphone, I'm guessing the other speaker, and an infrared emitter, so you can control your TV set. Now, if you really want to get into it, the device provides you with 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, GPS, GLONASS, BDS, NFC, and the previously mentioned USB-C port. On the camera front, well, let me tell you something. We have here one of the smallest punch holes I've seen in recent history, and that's pretty impressive. This punch hole hides a 20 megapixel camera for your selfie needs, which can only do Full HD video capture. Now, aside from that, we go to the back side with the original camera module design. The star of the show is a 64 megapixel shooter with optical image stabilization and face detection autofocus and f1.8 aperture. We also have an ultra-wide 8 megapixel camera and a macro small 2 megapixel camera. So 8 megapixel for ultra-wide, 2 megapixel for macro, and the ultra-wide one provides you with 119 degrees. Quite a few flashes here. I'm seeing 3 of them. So a triple LED flash camera with a dual tone colors for that flash, and this baby can capture 4K 60 frames per second video, and it has quite a few options for the camera, as Xiaomi and its associated brands or independent brands that came from it have accustomed us. So if you go here, you're going to see a lot of functions: vlog, movie effects, clone, full 64 megapixel night, panorama, slow-mo, long exposure. Then there's portrait. Then there's the regular photo mode with extras like macro, time burst, or tilt shift, AI, and HDR. In the video section, we can confirm what I said before. We can go up to 4K 60 frames per second in video capture. And finally, a pro mode, which includes lenses, exposure, ISO, shutter, focus, and white balance, plus some metering and sharpness, contrast, saturation, and so much more. And of course, filters. Okay, that's about it camera wise. On the software front, you probably know already that this is MIUI. It's actually MIUI 13 applied on top of Android 12, and I see that I already got an update. I actually recently installed an update, so that's nice to see. We also have functions like always on display here, which is customizable, one hand usage mode. This is the always on section and it's activated. You can customize it from here. I'm using these buttons at the bottom right now, but I can use gestures if I want to swipe gestures. This is the recent section with 2 columns, and as you can see, the control center with the quick settings has been split from the notification area. As we've seen before, we also have an app drawer with categories for the most often used apps. Okay, so that would be pretty much it. For me, this feels like a phone which is ideal to take pictures with the main camera. It's a 64 megapixel shooter with optical image stabilization, and to do some gaming on account of the processor, which has been forged, tested and retested over the past year. So mid-range gaming phone, but I'll try to find out what separates it from the mass. And the problem is that its biggest rival is actually its predecessor, the POCO F4. For now, it feels pretty wide and heavy, easy to handle and solidly built. That's it from us. We're going to have to see what the performance is, particularly for the CPU and main camera. That's it from gsn.com. Goodbye.